back to another episode of Psychonaut Sessions, your home for all things psycho. This is your host, Daniel Moeller, and today we are going to talk about JAX and the Hellhound. Getting back to my favorite era, the mid-80s of black and white, beatific, bounteous awesomeness. Trying to think. So, we are continuing Halloween month with JAX and the Hellhound, so it's not like strictly horror, but it's got definitely those sorts of themes to it, so I thought it would be a fun addition. Came out from Blackthorn Publishing. Blackthorn was only really around for a few years in the 80s, and they really gained a ton of popularity for their IP work. They did some other just basic independent creator-owned things like JAX and a few others, but they're known for doing Dick Tracy, amongst other things. Gumby. They had a 3D series that was really popular. They would do a one-shot or an annual sort of book that was in 3D format. So, like I mentioned before, Gumby was one of those. I think California Raisins was one of their more popular one that really put them on the map. And even Moonwalker, I believe, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. So, but they folded in a few years. They really couldn't keep it going. JAX and the Hellhound is actually a 3-issue series. I can't find issue 3 as it stands. Hopefully I'll be able to get it to complete my collection. Done by Dennis Francis. Dennis Francis is actually Jamaican-born comic book artist. I do believe he's an American citizen. He was actually an apprentice to Dick Giordano and worked with Neil Adams at Continuity Studios for some time. So he was very prolific during this 80s boom, but really hasn't done a whole lot. He did try to revive JAX and the Hellhound. Well, let me back that up a little bit. I think he actually did some film and advertising work. Especially with actually David Letterman, Late Night with David Letterman. He's tried to revive his comics career a little bit in the past, I would say decade or so, in 2010-ish. He tried to revive JAX and the Hellhound as an online comic. Very strange. I'll put a link into what I could find. It's not easy to find because whatever websites he was using to host no longer hold it, but JAX and the Hellhound came back as a computer graphics online web comic, and it just looks very interesting. I'll probably put a flash of something on the screen so you can kind of take a look. It's back when they really hadn't quite figured out computer graphics yet, so it just feels very odd, especially compared to just the crispness of the black and white pen and ink, which I really appreciate. So let's dive in. First, painted cover. Not going to complain about this. Absolutely beautiful. Don't really understand what that one extra can is about, but just love it overall. Kind of reminds me of the Now Comics covers a little bit. So, notes from the other side. So this is Dennis Francis's little editorial. It's interesting. A lot of black and white creator-owned books start out with an editorial letter or an intro letter that is really kind of self-degrading and just, it was so hard making this comic. And you definitely don't get that sense here. You get the sense that Dennis Francis is completely excited. Even in issue 2, he even says something about how much he just loves making comics and has a good time with it. So, gotta love his energy, and there is a lot of energy in this book. So this one, he talks about that transmigration is the idea of the soul at death passing from one being to another. The neat trick is to transfer the physical form from one being to another. This concept has been one of my pet interests for years. Change, of course, has been one of science fiction's oldest staples. And then he talks about the idea of obsession being a key factor in this book. with all due respect to Dennis Francis, because I love this book, I didn't get that idea of obsession and transmigration. I guess, yeah, I had a hard time kind of reconciling what he was meaning in the intro letter and then how the rest of it. Because the tone of this, it seemed like he was gonna be tackling some really heavy concepts, and the tone of it is actually very very fun. I mean, this could be almost be a Saturday morning cartoon. All right, so we get our heroes, JAX, and this book is kind of broken up into little segments and with their own little titles. So he's getting chased down. He's obviously got some kind of canister or something, and some thugs are after him. You get the sense that they kind of know him. So he rigs a little bomb thing, jumps into a canister, falls down the hill, and then there's his hellhound called Mulu, who manifests out of thin air. So that's basically what he is. He's a hellhound who kind of lives in an hellish, otherworldly dimension and manifests when JAX needs him. So we get the sense he is in Peru, I believe. He's in some South American country. And he works for the government, and it's not quite clear if it's DEA, because seems like he's battling against the cartels, and he obviously swiped something from them, or if he's CIA or what. But he's here talking with his contact, and basically, they're just kind of laying out the context of everything, but he needs to get out of the country. So here we have a scene where he goes to an airport. Lima. So it is Peru. He's dressed up as a woman to be in disguise. So as he's trying to sneak out of the country, a couple of guys come to maybe take them away. Not sure who they are. I think they're probably from the cartel, but Mulu manifests, eats them up. We don't really see it, but we get to see that munching and then the burp. So kind of a lot of fun, tongue-in-cheek sort of things. And then there is, he's on his way back. We get some kind of interesting, just like photocopy city scenes here. We get a little bit of him using and kind of talking back and forth with Mulu. So Mulu doesn't just pop in and out of this like dimension. It's a consciousness that he can talk to and confide in, so on and so forth. So they're talking about their quote unquote mutual acquaintance in Mulu's dimension, and as they're needing to stop this person, this thing that's getting ready to kind of come through. So they're kind of alluding to the big bad that they're trying to prevent from destroying the world, whatever. Interesting little thing here from Blackthorn Publishing: preteen Dreijin Kung Fu Kangaroos. Everybody was trying to bank on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles back then. And this is one of those fun ones. Yeah, preteen Dreijin Kung Fu Kangaroos. That's about all you can say about that. Okay, moving on. We get a scene here in Finland all of a sudden. We're in Finland, and there's this young girl here who seems to be possessed by this being, and she kind of has a freak out, and then that's about it. So, and all what we hear her say is, "I love you, Joretta." And this voice is like, "I know, my sweet." So that's the big bad, Joretta. Okay. So back in the States, JAX has arrived, and we get this interaction with his boss at the agency. Again, I'm not sure if it's CIA or what, but they make a big deal out of this relationship between him and his boss. And they make a big deal out of pointing out that she's quite a bit older than him, but he's still completely in love with her, and she's in love with him. and they're just kind of hanging out in his sort of room that he spends a lot of time shirtless apparently, which is just so 80s. And Mulu even manifests, and she's just kind of like, okay, whatever. But they're just kind of talking about it, talking about how it may have come about, and we're going to get his origin here in a little bit. And there's a big deal about some of the diamonds and things that he confiscated from this cartel. I don't really know, after reading 2 issues, what that has to do with anything, but it is kind of an element in the story. So, and those are the diamonds apparently. So that's kind of interesting, of all the detail that is done and rendered through the comic. I mean, there's a lot of detail in some of this. And then Dennis Francis decides to just, for the diamonds, they're just plain and blank. Interesting. Anyway, so here we get another glimpse into this girl in Finland, and she's having another kind of demonic freak out, like she's possessed by this character, and her parents are even like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So going back to JAX and his boss, they're playing chess, and they're kind of talking about, how this whole thing has happened with JAX and this hellhound. So apparently he was quote unquote vacation in South and Central America 5 years ago. And here he's dressed as a priest. So apparently he was like working undercover as a priest for the CIA. But working undercover, and then he is having to assist in exorcism. So he's completely out of his element. He's like, oh my God, this is insane. Even references The Exorcist. He's trying to read out of the Bible, but doesn't know anything about exorcisms at all. And then something starts calling to him inside the boy. And before you know it, he's whisked away into this other dimension. And there's this large demonic figure that's like, JAX, you've returned, my boy. And he's like, what? What are you talking about? Unfortunately, we just get a lot of figure work, and we don't get a lot of the rendering of this other dimension. It's done with that like photocopying style, collage style, so you can't really see it because it didn't really print well. So everything just kind of looks like black splotches. So, oh well. But so you get the sense that JAX knew this character whose name is Jaretta, and this character wants to feed off of JAX, but JAX doesn't really remember anything. So he's getting ready to get fed on, and then the Hellhound shows up, and Mulu and attacks him, pushes the demon away. Fun little fight, cool rendering of Hellhound, and the Hellhound seems to get bigger as he draws energy from this Jaretta demon. Eats him up again, crunch, crunch, munch, munch, munch. That's funny whenever they're just kind of showing JAX with a bunch of lettering whenever Mulu decides to eat up on something. Mulu introduces himself, and basically these were characters that appeared when he was really young, and he kind of blocked that out of his mind, but they were like imaginary beings, that like imaginary friends, but that came to him. They're not really, I mean, that's just what he remembered them as. But Mulu was always there to protect JAX. So he, all this kind of comes out. He blips back into existence, but of course the people that were there during the exorcism did not see him blip in and out. It was kind of just like happened in his mind or within a split second. The boy is okay. Jaretta the demon is gone. And that was it. That was the beginning of all of this nonsense. So Mulu, the Hellhound, is helping JAX, trying to keep Jaretta from coming into this dimension. And so here's that Gumby 3D ad. The Gumby. Back in Colombia, we get to see that the cartels are upset with JAX. Again, it's not really described what JAX really did, other than he took diamonds from the cartel, or why that happened, and what his relationship was to them. But they're going to go to the States to attack him. That's pretty much what's happening there. So the whole shtick here is that Jax and his boss go to Finland because they're trying to hunt down this Doretta character, and Jax and Mulu get the sense that he's trying to manifest in Finland. Nothing in particular happened other than they just get this feeling. So they go to Finland, and they try to hunt down where this person is. The cartel is right behind them in Chicago, and notices, okay, we're in Jack's apartment, we're ransacking it, but there is a picture here of his boss slash girlfriend, and I guess this is his boss's daughter, and he's got a picture of the two of them. So they're like, okay, we know we can hunt somebody down. So then we see a phone conversation between his boss and her daughter, and it's kind of an interesting little segment. If you kind of, it's like she's actually talking to her about a guy that she's seeing, and like, Mom, you're such a prude. I have everything here under control. Lola has the day off, and Akeem is taking me dancing, and then blah 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 on the phone. She puts the phone down and she's looking at the audience, like at the reader. She's looking at us and saying, is honesty really the best policy? What do you think? And then goes back to talking to her mom and is like, oh, mother dear, if you don't want me to go out with him, then I won't, and blah blah blah. And it's just like, it's weird moments like that kind of take away from the seriousness of Dennis's like opening letter, about how, this is supposed to be kind of like this existential, self-reflective comic, and it's just weird. And with Jax like constantly walking around with his shirt off, and at one point even in his underwear in front of like his main content, it's just like, what? So that was a weird breaking the fourth wall moment that didn't really make such. It just breaks from the tone. There's like such a mixture of tones here, but that's okay. It's kind of fun that way. It kind of keeps me on my toes. So she goes to answer the door, and of course the cartel's there waiting for her. Back in Finland, Jax gets the feeling that he knows where he needs to go. What's interesting is he starts running out the door, and she's like, hey, that's my coat. Like, for some reason he grabbed her fur coat. Like, why? And he's even got his own coat. So why he would grab her own? It's like, again, it's those weird little moments of like, yeah, we're gonna make a fun joke. And so that girl gets fully possessed at this point. Doretta is fully coming through. Her parents are freaking out, and he grows big, big, big for some reason. Poor girl, in her body, and is bursting out of their house. And that's the end. Got some Prince Valiant ads and whatnot. But that's the end, and I believe that this is actually the exact same drawing as issue number 2. Yeah, pretty much. So the final drawing is which is kind of a cool effect, I guess, but it would have been cool to see something a little bit different. It's an interesting cover, nonetheless. So issue 2, pretty fast, pretty breezy book. The editorial on this one is just like things for reading. And again, I do like this guy's tone, because he's just like, man, the simple truth is storytelling is just fun. Which is much more refreshing than those creators that are just like, ugh, this was a slog. It was so hard to do, and I'd much rather not do it. But he just does talk about how Doretta the demon actually is a product of a dream he had about a 5-story tall monster that was on a rampage, going through town and through a parking lot, throwing cars, and thought it would be fun to draw. So this is what we have. We have Doretta as some 5-story tall monster trouncing through this neighborhood, throwing cars, destroying everything. And that's just basically what we get. A lot of carnage. Jax and his boss show up on the scene. I have a feeling Dennis is still trying to work through kind of layouts and stuff. We only get snippets of stuff. We don't really get great scenes that kind of help communicate exactly what's going on. Um, but anyway, Jax makes his way to a roof somehow, jumps onto a roof, and screams at Joretta. And Joretta's like, "Oh yeah, Jax, awesome. Glad you're here because I want to feed on you." And of course, Mulu pops out and tries to attack, but Joretta at this point is already too strong, even though Mulu's kind of eaten out his eye a little bit. Um, so a little bit of damaged face there. So the battle ensues, but they basically disappear. Like Mulu gets disappeared, and we don't know what's happened. And so it's the battle stops temporarily. Jax goes to tend to his girl, who's kind of broken from all the debris falling and everything. Again, we get these chapter breaks. I don't know really what purpose they serve, but Jax, going and visiting her in the hospital, nothing much. I mean, there's this whole page of him or two of him just talking with the doctor and just, hey man, I really like you. You're a really cool guy, Jax. Yeah. Well, I've learned a little bit of Finnish and I'm posing as a doctor and I don't know, and it goes nowhere. It just, I don't understand. I'm not trying to punch down at all. It's just there's a lot of weird, jarring things that happen that don't really, they don't really serve the story. So he finally gets with her. She's on a crutch, but he's obviously happy that she's okay. And then we get this other dimensional thing happening. The girl that was possessed by Joretta, her essence is in this other dimension, and she's just light in consciousness at this point. Jax is meditating, and his boss girlfriend finds out that she can't get a hold of the daughter, so she's a little worried. But he's trying to reach out to Mulu and can't get a hold of Mulu, and so Mulu is actually trapped in this other dimension by Joretta with all these demons, and I guess this is hell, and they're all basically torturing him. So they're all kind of crowding around him and beating him up, torturing him, getting him back. Little glimpse here. Obviously, they have her. The cartel has her daughter, and that's basically it. They're using her as leverage. Kind of a weird hat of this guy that's just randomly digging in the trash. Again, another random panel. So apparently, again, he's using this like photocopy method for some stuff, including that. Well, I think the buildings were traced. It looks like, but apparently, with Joretta coming through and they're talking about it on the news and stuff, the dimensions are like collapsing now, because he's punctured through all the way. And so it's causing reality to kind of break. And so there's this dimensional shift stuff that's in the sky all over the world, and everybody's talking about it. But it's really hard to kind of make out with that kind of black and white photocopying. I wish he just would have done some kind of interesting line work, personally. Jax goes back to his house, finds out everything was ransacked. They finally get the idea that, my girlfriend's daughter was kidnapped. Yeah, not a lot going on here, except that girl who was possessed by Joretta and Mulu, who's now a pup, they're connecting and they're talking. There's a little bit of interesting stuff that's going on here in terms of, about just people as conscious beings in the universe, and what his job is. This is to secure the boundaries of reality, and he chooses the form of a canine, and she's kind of shifting back and forth because she's just this all she is consciousness. So she transmorphs into an ape to kind of feel what she can morph into, and then morphs into a dog herself, because dogs are beautiful and wonderful. So moving forward, she kind of bonds with Mulu, and so it helps, I guess, give him enough power that he fully manifests. back into the world. So, JAX finally gets to connect with them. And so there's this, moment where they kind of exchange power with one another. And, the onlookers are kind of like, what the heck? But this is kind of a cool scene. They get a phone call, and now the cartel's making their move. And then at the same time, Jaretta is like corralling all of the denizens of his dimension. It's party time. Let's go kill everybody in the world. The cartel's getting ready to make their move. JAX and his girlfriend are getting ready to meet up with the cartel to make some kind of exchange to get the daughter back. He starts using his Mulu powers and is trying to convince them, hey, you need to stop this because there's this dimensional thing happening and we need to focus on that. All this crazy stuff happens. Mulu helps him attack and take down the cartel team members. And ultimately, they're at their mercy. The comic ends with JAX and Mulu with the cartel on their knees. And Mulu's getting ready to chomp chomp. But we don't get... It's kind of a weird place to end because we don't get to see Jaretta trying to make his final move because there was only one more issue after this. Haven't seen it around. I wouldn't mind getting it. It's a fun concept. I did enjoy it. It was okay. It was all right. Like I said, it was just there was like these jarring moments. Again, I wish that dimensional shift in the sky, because it just looks like black ink blotches at this point. I wish it would have been rendered with actual pen and ink, and he could have put a different type of effort into that. I'm not going to say more effort because I have no idea how hard it is to do this sort of. Because you obviously have to cut that stuff out, and you can see the lines cut out through there. But I would have liked to have seen more of that. And the whole cartel thing seems to be this like weird side story distraction. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it's still, again, it's just fun. There's a tone about these comics from the mid 80s, these black and white comics, that's just, you get the sense it's just this one person doing what they want to do. And that's what's fun about it. So JAX the Hellhound, not a terrifying book for Halloween month, but hey, it's got hell, it's got demons, so it's scary, right? All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining, and stay safe out there. Stay scary because it is Halloween month, and keep it psycho.